Welcome everyone to Charts Free webinar series. Today we have Going Mobile, a strategic plan for driving adoption. And welcome Jason Lechner and Mike Andrews.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure being here and being with a ton of chart members. And we're hoping that you get a lot out of this presentation. Today, we're going to share a unique experience that I saw develop in front of my eyes, and Jason was an integral part of it, and his team at Pizza Ranch. They are a customer of DiscoverLinks and actually one of my customers, so I've been intimately involved with this. So today we're really going to share with you the plan and the process that Jason, the leadership team, his training team went through in order to drive mobile app adoption as a part of an overall solution with their e-learning platform and the DiscoverLinks system. The unique thing is, and what I want you to keep in mind is that this was all done through an organization that is about 95% franchised. This was an optional solution presented to them, and Jason will talk more about that as we get into it. But we're really excited. We've got some great Q&A between Jason and I, a little demo, and then we're going to show you some ROI facts that we think are significant. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward into introductions. And Jason, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself. Take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tara, fellow chart members. Glad to be with you today. My name is Jason Lechner, and there's many of you that I have worked with in the past, or we met up at a conference. But for those of you who I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet, I'm the Director of Training and Development at Pizza Ranch. I've been with Pizza Ranch for about 3 years. I've been a member of Chart for over 10 years, and I've been in the industry for quite some time now. Pizza Ranch is a company that we have over 220 restaurants in our chain. As Mike said, over 95% of those are franchised. Really, our concept is dine-in and all-you-can-eat buffet, as well as carry-out, delivery, third-party, virtual brands, and we even have some drive-thrus in our system. And so we have a wide variety of value proposition for the guest. And that is part of this mobile app strategy as well. So that's a little bit about me and who we are. And again, I'm just excited to work with you here today. Okay,
thank you, Jason. Let me introduce myself, and no, there is not a grammar error. I am the moderator today. It's an in-between between moderator and facilitator. I couldn't decide what to call myself, so I incorporated both. I work with DiscoverLink. My role is an account manager. As I said earlier, Pizza Ranch is a customer of mine that I support, Jason and his team, and the operational side. I've been an account manager for DiscoverLink for 6 years. We offer e-learning solutions to the restaurant industry and hospitality space, so hotels as well. My background is operations and L&D, and having deployed global system deployments or been involved in global system deployments during my time in the L&D world. So that's a little bit about me, but you know, this presentation is really about Jason, and so I want to go ahead and get started with that. So as far as us getting involved here, Pizza Ranch had rolled out the mobile app previous to 2020. And then during the late spring, early summer in 2020, they reinitiated that rollout. And certainly COVID had a lot to do with this because of the ability to be able to communicate. And so, you know, Jason and his team really went through a very methodical process that you'll see the results of that in some of the data points that we share at the end. So what I'd like to ask you, Jason, and have you kind of address is really these 3 questions. You know, the initial strategy and the long-term vision, because you got to know where you want to go, but where you want to eventually be. How did you engage leadership at Pizza Ranch to back this and support you? And then sort of the pre-planning before you even begin to roll out. So Jason, fill us in.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. As Mike said, we had been testing this mobile app in about 8 or 9 restaurants in 2019. And that test began because of our strategic plan that leadership approved of. We heard from our franchisees that we wanted better communication from the restaurant support center, quicker communication, just easier access to information and content. And so we believe that this mobile app that we had at our fingertips, literally, with a current vendor partner of ours, DiscoverLink, was a way to solve a lot of that, as well as the value adds with being able to complete training from a mobile device instead of a computer in the office and those types of things. So the initial strategy was really based on communication and content accessibility. Yes, the pandemic hit, and so we had, like most of you, all of you on this call today, we had playbooks that we had to design, operational changes that needed to be made quickly, new cleaning and disinfection processes and procedures, all of this information in video form, in document form, in course form, and we needed to get it up quickly. And so one of the things we said as we were in the midst of all of that was, man, boy, it would have been nice to have this mobile app in all of our restaurants by now. People could really access this even much more than they are right now. And we looked at that as an opportunity to re-engage leadership and kind of use the pandemic as a Trojan horse, if you will, to reprioritize the system-wide launch of this mobile app. And when we kind of spelled out some of the whys and came back to not only the initial strategic plan, but also now with this pandemic, and there'll be another crisis in the future of some kind, it will be really, really beneficial for our company to have this in place. And they supported it. As long as we as a team weren't going to add a lot of extra work or confusion to our operators, who at the time were, we're talking May, June of last year, they're in the midst of running things hour by hour with state shutdowns and reopens and all of that. And so we needed to then get into some pre-planning that the leadership team would absolutely support, that this is going to be able to roll out without it being really intrusive for our managers. And what we looked at was, okay, how can we do this? We need this to be very intimate. So the pre-planning steps and the tasks, how are we going to roll this out and implement this? It needed to be very intimate, maybe not restaurant by restaurant, but small groups. We needed to involve the operations team. So our franchise business consultants, they are on the front lines in between our support center and the restaurants. And so we needed to involve them for this to be successful. And then on our end, in our department, training and development, we knew that we had content that we had to update. If we were going to go mobile, we needed to increase, button sizes on some of our courses. We needed to redesign some of our documents that were PDFs to have not only larger font, but less words and just easier to read and flow through on a mobile app experience versus on a web version. And so we got to work internally. We designed what we believe is a really strong informational webinar series plan that would then follow up for those who opted in with implementation Zoom calls to implement this mobile app. And we got to work and made some announcements. And I think Mike's going to show you all a little bit here of what we did on our side.
Okay. And I think some of the key points here is really the fact of gaining that buy-in, but the pre-planning steps and not just taking the campus from a UR web perspective and what it looked like on a laptop, desktop, but now how will it appear from a mobile device, which is significantly smaller, or a tablet? That is a critical step. And I think you guys accomplished a lot, and you're still working on it, but you've accomplished a lot prior to that. And I'd just like to commend you and your team. Like many of the people on this call, the training department at Pizza Ranch got scaled back because of COVID. So you were doing all of this with less bodies to support that transition as well. So kudos to yourself, as well as the organization and the leadership for buying into this. So let's talk a little bit about now how you executed communication, and then I'm going to let you walk them through high level sort of a layout of the webinar and how you created this intimate environment with the teams. From a communication perspective, and this is key, always key and critical, to prepare your field, get them interested, get them intrigued. And so, you know, you had, this is just as a sample that I received that you shared with us as you were communicating internally. And the key is that communication and doing it in multiple different ways, because people need to see it in different ways before they actually say, oh, okay, I need to watch for this. And so this is just a great example about when the rollout is happening, and even showing some screenshots of what this mobile app is going to look like. So it now creates some intrigue, some excitement, and hey, I want to learn more about this. So Jason, once you got the communications going, then we actually started executing the webinar. So why don't you walk us through some of these key slides?
Yeah, that last slide was just a snip from our weekly newsletters that we send out across our entire system, the Pizza Ranch News. And that's definitely a highly engaged piece that all of our operators and owners look at. And so we got that article in there. In the webinars themselves, I just want to share this with you all, is that, you know, this wasn't just a Jason webinar that I'm just doing on my own. As I said earlier, collaboration and having the right people involved really was part of our strategic plan to get the most of our restaurants engaged and signed up as possible. And so myself and another person in our team down here, yeah, we were the architects and we really put it all together. But there was two key people, or people groups, I guess, that we brought in that we knew were going to highly increase the odds of success. One was our vendor partner. And so we partnered with DiscoverLink. Mike knows a lot of this because he and I worked on this together. I asked Mike and the DiscoverLink team if he could help me out with these webinars. Now, keep in mind, we ended up doing over 30 of these webinars over the course of 4 weeks, and how we rolled those out. We went group by group. So we did 2 FBC groups per webinar. And we got about 70% of every FBC group. So we ended up with about, I'll call it 30 restaurants per webinar. Those informational webinars. And that was the intimate part. So I was asking Mike and the DiscoverLink team, could you attend all of these webinars and really not only be a spokesperson, but answer questions if they ask about the DiscoverLink campus itself, et cetera, et cetera. Mike was more than willing to help out. He had to call in a relief pitcher a couple of different times, but whoever your vendor partner is, it doesn't have to be DiscoverLink, whoever it is, leverage those relationships and help them to make sure it looks as much of a value proposition for your field if you're in a similar situation that we are. The last one was the operational support. I mentioned earlier, our franchise business consultants, they know the managers and the owners. They know those frontline workers a lot more closely than any of us at the support center do. And so having them not only be part of this, but to help build it. And then they were presenting some of this content as well. And we saw a lot more communication back and forth during those webinars because of it. This is just a very simple agenda. We just wanted to let everybody know what we're going to be covering in the webinar. The big piece was right in the middle there, and that was the demo. The demonstration of this mobile app. People can read stuff and look at stuff, but as we all know, when you see it live, you see it in action, it's much more likely to maybe get you interested in signing up. So we ran through some of the key topics there, and that was just the agenda that we used. I think it worked pretty effectively for us. This was the why, and this one I liked. All these are great. These are very easy Microsoft Office icons, by the way. But a couple that I pointed out that I think for our system really was important. The third one on there, flexibility. We have a lot of pizza ranches that are in smaller markets, 5,000 to 10,000 people, and don't always have the strongest internet, strongest broadband, all that stuff. And so having people be able to use their devices and without getting into all the weeds here, tin canning content on the mobile app and then having it accessible quickly. That was good flexibility wise. Secondly was not every one of our operators wants to buy 2, 3, 4, 5 laptops or computers for their training desk. And so, and having the team members and managers using their personal devices or buying one tablet and then letting that be shared on a mobile app experience was much more flexible for our operators than what their current situation was. The other two really quickly, the modernized learning, as we as a, I'll call it, we're a blend between probably quick serve and family dining, which is a really weird blend, but we have a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds working for us. And not only is technology a nice thing to have, but it's really an expected part of the work experience. And we needed to do some modernization for our learning and also just in general. And that was a big one. And the quick access to people development through the mobile app with our learning courses and training programs being completed at the fingertips instead of back in the manager's office. Those ones really stood out for our managers and owners as to why they should sign up for this.
Yeah, and I'll add a quick note to this too. This is where Jason really engaged the franchise business consultant who actually facilitated this slide and can get into the weeds with his team that was on the call and really kind of hit home and just pinprick certain aspects even greater. And that's where you get the buy-in from the field and the ahas. So I thought that that was a great way to design the webinar and incorporate those district managers or FBCs, depending on your situation.
Yeah, that's correct. This right here, we actually did a reminder slide and took a few minutes to remind folks of our training programs. We had launched an all new team member training program in late 2019, we'll call it Q3. And now this was only 4 or 5 months later, and we hadn't quite seen the adoption yet. So we were using, just like we were using the pandemic as a Trojan horse for the mobile app, we were using these webinars as a Trojan horse to remind folks of how we properly train at Pizza Ranch. And it was good, it was really good. We actually had a lot of questions during these webinars about the training programs, which was, I'll never say no to side benefits to our training and development programs.
Okay.
This was really good. We wanted to show them and remind them, hey folks, if you sign up for the mobile app, it's not like the web version just goes away. And so we walk them by what you see on the screen in front of you. That's our resource. That's one of the resource pages in our LMS campus on the web version. And so everybody was very familiar with what that looks like and how you flow through it. And then we transitioned over. And I think, Mike, if you click, we will see that then we just show them it's the same stuff. It's just laid out differently on the mobile app experience. And it still has all these different features that you do on the web version. Now it's on a mobile app. And I think that was that piece to sort of put some of our operators at ease that they weren't really going to be doing a new campus or a new LMS experience. It was the same experience just on mobile versus web. And then we just reminded them of the different resources that we have available. Last but not least, we wanted to make sure they knew what to do next. Probably the key for all of us when you leave a meeting or you leave any type of learning, like what's my next steps? What are we doing? We pointed right to that FBC. So, I mean, we had people in the midst of these informational webinars because we lined it up. This was an informational webinar. If they liked what they saw and they wanted to actually install these or have the chance to install in their restaurants, they needed to then do an implementation Zoom meeting with us. But we drove it right back to the FBC. Get the FBC involved. Again, they know each other, the restaurants and the owners and the managers and that FBC much more than we do. So they put in that request. We would schedule a 1-hour meeting. Our experience with the DiscoverLink mobile app, it's very easy to install. All we have to do is get the QR code turned on those campus locations in those individual restaurants. And it's one simple request. So we don't want to tell them that on the informational webinar, like, hey, everybody, it's really easy to do. Just do it on your own. Because there are a couple of key points that we had to have in place to make sure it was done correctly. So, but anyways, drive it through the FBC and then, complete a questionnaire. Things like, will you use our template for a personal device policy? Do you understand the geofencing security and what that means? And then who's going to be the point person for the rollout in your restaurant? A lot of these restaurants wanted just the managers to start. on the mobile app, and then they were going to roll it out to their teams moving forward. So fill out those questionnaires, had that meeting, very successful. You know, we were installing people on this mobile app remotely from Orange City, Iowa, down to Conway, Arkansas, Billings, Montana, I guess as far reaching as Pizza Ranch is, which is Rocky Mountain and Midwest. So steps to launch were easy.
Okay. So that gives you a little bit of an idea from the attendees' perspective, is sort of the dynamic of how they laid out these webinars. And as Jason said, there were 30 of them, multiple per FBC to create small intimate groups, and to really allow, one of the things that Jason said is intimacy. People, when the group is smaller and they know each other, they're more apt to ask questions right then and there, get those answers, get that comfort level up even higher, so that we have adoption happen really quickly. So Jason, now that they've kind of seen the outline of the demo, one of the things is the demonstration that you physically did. So Jason's going to take us through a condensed version, just because we want to focus on some of the Q&A that you may be garnering in your mind as we speak. So Jason, go ahead and just kind of give them the Cliff Notes version of the demo that you did during these.
I'll do my best to not dive into the deep on this, but there's our mobile app, Discover link, and we're going to click on that. And so we just showed them the key functions of this mobile app. There's this landing page. So this is our version. Whoever your vendor partner is, you know, reach out to them, get demos, that kind of thing. But there's a home page. Without logging in at all, I can see these most recent messages, and I've got messages from folks about rollouts and et cetera, et cetera. Really key to us was this, these 4 main page resources. So we were able to link any of our resources, and we've got thousands of them, but we can put 4 on this main page. And so no matter what happens, they see these 4 most current, most critical, most important items. And during the pandemic, as you all know, things were changing by the hour on some days. And so we were able to do that and keep that updated. Into the resources I'll go. You see some folders here, and you know, all of it very easy to access. But you may go, hey, that doesn't look like a whole lot. I mean, what happened to all those folders? So when we click over here, when we actually log in, you know, we're able to, in our mobile app, our LMS experience, we're able to make content available to people based on their job role or their skill position in the company, or both, filtered through all that. And so once you log in, and we know who is the person using this device, and on here, now when I log in, not only can I complete all my training, which I've got some red triangles, so I'm late on some things, but I can complete all my different training if I like. I can also go back to this resources, and now everything that is to me in my job role, my skill position, but also the things that we at Pizza Ranch wanted to make sure they had to have an active account and login to access are now become available to me. So I've got my COVID-19 items, all my charts, everything I needed, all available to me once I've logged in. Yeah, there's so many features I'd love to get into, but if anybody on the call wants to talk about features, just on the meeting wants to talk about features, let me know. We can do that offline. Messages, really important here. We can send, this is the communication piece. So our founder, you know, Pizza Ranch is a relationship-based organization. We have strong relationships with our vendors, strong relationships with our field and our owners. And so if our founder wants to send a message to the dishwasher in Wichita, Kansas, you know, he needs that person's email or phone number, which is going to be not likely to happen. Now we can actually, he could send a message to all dishwashers, everybody that's got the skill position dishwasher, saying, hey, dishwashers, we're getting into July. It's really hot. Stay hydrated. I started as a dishwasher in the company myself. So we appreciate what you do. And they can send that out. Or our director of culinary, you know, he can say, hey, we've got all new chicken tenders we just rolled out. They're delicious. They're crispy, all this. Here's the 3 steps critical in the fryers. And he can send those to the chicken cooks. And not just send it to the email, or the restaurant email, and hope that somebody passes that information on. It's all going directly to the people that need it. So we're pretty excited about that. this last piece here. A couple of things I do want to highlight, just I think really important when you're looking to consider a mobile app. Really this download one here. And so these are all courses that I guess, tin can would be the verbiage to use, but I can download this content to my device within the mobile app. And what happens then, which again, for many of you, this is just common sense, but I'm just going to share it anyways. If I'm completing a course on, we'll just say the breadsticks course at the top, and I'm back there by the ovens and, in the kitchens that doesn't always have the best Wi-Fi or whatever. So I'm doing my training course. It's a storyline course. I'm in the middle of it. And then I get a disconnection from the internet for 30 seconds. It kind of pauses and then it lets me go forward. Well, in some experiences, that disconnection doesn't give me credit for completion. But when it's tin can like this, I can still move forward. I can complete the course when my internet signal is connected again and I've got data and we're going again. It'll feed that to the LRS. So again, I don't want to but it'll feed that up saying Jason did complete this. He didn't stop the course when that internet disconnection happened. He went through and finished it. Give him credit. And we've seen a lot less requests come into our department for give me credit for this course because I completed it and it did give me credit with the use of the mobile app and the tin can stuff. Other things in here, again, I'm just, I don't want to get too in the details, but I can look at all my history right here from my mobile app. Did I complete this stuff or not? When did I complete it? My knowledge score, which is a whole different webinar for a different day, probably regarding knowledge score and is it predictive for retention and tenure. But anyways, a lot of things here. Again, going back to the strategic plan, communication from us to our field, whether it's in message format or in resources and document format. But then again, going back and just talking about, the other benefit from doing this is the completion of the training from your mobile device versus in the manager's office or somewhere back in the kitchen, kind of stuffed away in the back. You can really do this not only anywhere in the restaurant, but where it makes most sense in the restaurant, such as do your front counter training at the front counter instead of the manager's office, or do your chicken frying training by the chicken fryer instead of in the manager's office. So I'm going to stop that share, Mike, and give it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Let me go ahead and reshare our the slide deck. And I think a couple of things, and I've kind of noted, and I just want to touch on this really quick, because I think a lot of people are probably asking themselves the question that you kind of alluded to, which is, security relative to proprietary content, and what happens even when a team member leaves the brand, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And there are security measures built into the system. And we may address some of those as we move forward, but at a high level, that security is really done with geofencing that doesn't allow the app to work outside of the restaurant itself or a parameter around the restaurant, so that we're not dealing with those type of issues of hourly employees taking content when they're not on the clock and then create labor issues, as well as when a team member leaves the brand and their ID is deactivated, they lose access to the platform and they lose access to anything that they downloaded. So, almost called you Josh. Jason alluded to the tin can, which allows me to download content, watch it offline in a situation where my Wi-Fi at the store is sketchy, and then reconnect. Well, that downloaded content will get wiped clean when my ID is deactivated. So there are security measures. And those are the things that you want to talk about, whether it be with DiscoverLink or other vendors, is, what are those safeguards to protect the intellectual property of the brand? So I hope that at least gives you some insight, and we can certainly attest to more as we move through this and get into the QA. But I've got a few other questions from a support perspective. So you mentioned, what was that initial response level from the field as you completed or as you were doing these webinars?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the initial response is better than we anticipated. We heard a lot of the folks that were in the either the internet limited locations or in the too many new hires and too much training going on, not enough computers. They responded immediately. And then others came in waves. And I think Mike will show kind of an install chart with how it's come as a grassroots movement, so to speak. But the response was strong. And now the nice thing is we're getting feedback. We're getting feedback on our content. We're getting feedback on how it plays on mobile versus not. We have so much content out there that people in there using it in this capacity is helping us prioritize our project list for what gets updated when. So a very strong field response initially.
Good, 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 good. And then, you know, you kind of talked a little bit about the field activation process that you kind of put into play. You know, as your team shared those responses and conducted those webinars during COVID, especially, again, how did people react? How did the FBCs or the GMs that were involved with those implementations as the point person respond versus the way you might have done other things prior to this rollout?
Well, we supported with FBC and a trainer would do these calls, and we'd schedule those immediately. To us, you know, we wanted to help our operators as much as we could. You know, Pizza Ranch, we care about the safety of our guests and our team members. And as a buffet concept, we had a lot of kind of hoops to jump through and a lot of things we needed to do to prove to ourselves, but also to our guests and to the authorities, basically, that we can do these things safely. So when they were asking to install this, we would respond immediately and get this done immediately because we knew that it was going to help them get the training, get the content, get the information they needed to keep themselves safe and keep our guests safe. And we continue to respond with that immediacy, even though the requests have gone down as more and more have already have it in their restaurants. We continue to support quickly.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that is key. That initial thrust is key because you said earlier, you know, I might roll it out as a franchisor, I might roll it out to my managers. And then once they get comfortable with it, then they become the conduit to push it and train the employees on how to implement or activate the mobile app and then leverage the mobile app. So, you know, it's that cascading process that I think is key and critical with how you did initially the field activation support. Because if I'm not truly understanding of how to do this, then I may convey that to my employees, and then all of a sudden you've got a whole store that really isn't on board the way they could be on board. So I think that was great and a great step in the process. It's a little extra work, but it saves you on the back end fixing problems that are created because of inaccurate implementation.
That's right.
And so, you know, I'm sure everybody on the call is really, okay, well, how is this working? And so, you know, one of the focuses that we worked with Jason and per his request is, you know, can we get a report of how many devices are being activated on a weekly basis? So we've created a report for Pizza Ranch. It's scheduled. It comes out every Friday morning. Jason's team sees it. I see it as the account manager so that I can evaluate and him and I can have conversations about it. And this graph just kind of gives you a brief overview of, you know, how quickly we were able to engage and move the dial faster with how, or at least how we believe we were able to move it faster because of the implementation process, as well as the support of the implementation. So here, you know, we rolled this out basically in the month of June. Our last webinar was July 2nd. And by July 1st, we had 170 people. Mind you, franchise, optional. You know, this was not a mandated program. In October, so, you know, 3 months later, we almost doubled that. The 6/25/21 is, as of a week ago, over 500 devices. So these are individual devices, employee manager devices that are implemented. And, you know, your comment was as well, the engagement is slowing a little bit, and you're going to have that because other things are going to come into play. Even the reopening of some stores now in your system have forced focus to change a little bit, but we're still moving forward. Any thought on this, Jace?
No, I mean, just, you know, June 1st, that number would have been about 23. And then a month later, we had 170. So it really kind of took off quick. And then it continues to grow, and we'll give it another push here. We've got some other focus points right now, but it'll continue to grow grassroots level as well.
Okay, and then some other data points just for the audience to see and absorb is the fact that during all of the reopening events that happened in 2020 throughout the year, but looking at these initial reopening training, disinfection specialists, which are probably a lot of us created that new position, environmental manager, health checks, curbside content or contactless delivery training, and all of these assignments. So 23,000 assignments, 16,000 completions. So a 71% rate, which I think is pretty phenomenal. If you probably looked industry-wide from an LMS deployment perspective of content, in a very short period of time, 2 to 4 to 6 weeks, to get to those levels is really significant and matches some of the value proposition that you and the leadership team identified, which is getting information to the field quickly. And so, you know, just some data points for the audience. One last one, and when I dug into the Pizza Ranch platform and ran these reports internally, it was astounding to me. Between fall of 2019, when you really there was an engagement into the mobile app, even though you had deployed it, to now fall, where you have a substantially increased engagement. Your participation rate as far as getting training accomplished jumped 77%. And when I look at one training component, the back of the house training, which is producing the new menu items for the LTO, which is key and critical, improved by 253%. I had to run the math like 3 times because, and those are significant values. And though we can't say mobile did all of that, it played a significant role. So just some data points for the audience out here to really kind of equate value to what Pizza Ranch and what Jason's team has been able to accomplish in a very short period of time with a lot of work. So my last question before we get to some of the Q&A is really, what's the future look like? And what are you guys thinking about from a mobile app perspective and how that plays into the overall strategy?
Yeah, we're going to, well, like with everything in training development, things need updates, things need evolution. So we'll continue to do that with our content, but usage enhancements, you know, we're looking to tie in to our social pages. We do a lot of posting on social media as a company. And so driving users from the mobile app, our LMS mobile app, into our social pages quickly to help them understand company-wide what's going on, what's the new news, what will take place, more communication back and forth. The other thing we're doing more of over the last 8 to 10 weeks has been equipping our owners and our general managers and training them on how to manage their own individual restaurant resource pages so that they can actually, to a certain degree, create their unique location-specific training items and put that onto their LMS with some help and some guidance and some training from us. And so we want to, you know, continue to kind of train the trainer, if you will, on how they can leverage that campus to their own ability and get more of the ROI for their own investment on that. And we hope there's not another pandemic, but we know there will be another crisis in the industry. There always is. And we just want to be prepared for it. So making sure that we've got this in as many people's hands as possible to be a solution for communication and content access in the future.
Okay, and again, I think that's key and critical to think about. Now you have the platform in place. How do you continue to improve it so that you are better prepared for whatever comes at us next, whether it be as an industry or with the pandemic as a total global impact on everybody, but certainly the hospitality space. So this last slide I'm going to put up, and we're going to transition to Q&A. So we'll start asking Tara what questions you have out here. But real quick, this is really the life cycle that Jason and the Pizza Ranch team went through. We talked a lot about the strategy, the buy-in, preparing the system or the platform, and then the communication, execution of the deployment plan, which was really devised in step 3, and then really managing and monitoring the engagement, building the ROI, and then really getting the improvements, because Jason has ferreted, hey, it would be really cool now if the mobile app can do this. So, that's another question for your vendor partner, is their ability and willingness to grow the system as more and more people use it and see additional value opportunities. So I'm going to leave this up. And Tara, what do we have in the way of questions out there from our chart friends?
Okay, I have a few. The first was, Jason, did you already have an LMS you used before converting to DiscoverLink, or was DiscoverLink your first LMS vendor?
Great question. As an organization, we actually had a self-created LMS. One of the members of our team created one on their own, but then DiscoverLink was the first true vendor partner we had for LMS.
Okay, the second one was, does the brand pay for the system and licenses, or do the franchisees pay?
The Pizza Ranch, the support center, the Pizza Ranch Inc., we pay for the LMS, and we don't put that on our individual restaurants or owners as an added fee. It's part of what they're buying into with their franchise agreement and franchise fees.
Okay, what is the ceiling for the number of device installs?
Great question. Mike, maybe you can handle that one better.
So from the DiscoverLink perspective, the ceiling is unlimited devices. So it is a set fee per location in order to implement the mobile app. But as far as number of devices, whether it's 10 or 100 per location, or 1,000 and 10,000 per brand, the fee remains the same. It's an annualized fee for unlimited devices.
Okay, another question is, what kinds of questions did you receive from the franchisees during the informational webinars?
That's a really important one. So a lot of our questions were related to the security side of things, and not just the information, like the Pizza Ranch information security, but the actual devices. What happens if this person drops their phone into the fryer, and then their mom calls and says they have to, pay for their phone, or what happens if they don't connect to the Wi-Fi and they're using their data, and now their father calls and says they have to pay their phone bill. And so we partnered with our internal chief administrative officer, who has some legal background and insight, as well as reached out to some of my friends in the industry and just got examples of other personal device policies. And so we created a template, and then during the implementation webinars, we would highly recommend that they use this template, fill in their ownership group name and location names, and then have everybody who's using that mobile app sign off on that personal device policy that just protects them as restaurateurs from any type of issues as far as that. So security was the biggest one. There was other questions just about some of the communication, the features within the mobile app, but that's going to be with most things. The biggest trend as far as questions was security related.
Okay, the next one is, how do you handle making sure that your hourly employees aren't taking training off the clock?
Oh, well, we bang that gong as much as we can, and we do. The thing about the geofencing is they can't access this outside of the geofence. So that helps, first and foremost. Now, truth be told, they could, from a laptop in their home, access the web version. And so it's a constant coaching and information during orientation, very clearly state, don't complete any training off the clock. You come into this restaurant, you clock in, you complete your training. Now, the one feature we have with our LMS setup is that the training you complete, it actually tracks the time in training for every content item. So if it took you 48 minutes and 10 seconds to complete a course, which I wouldn't recommend, it's a really long course, but if it took you that long and you told your manager, hey, I did this at home, I want to be paid for this, they can go in, look at that individual's transcript and pay them those 48 minutes and 12 seconds.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would add to that equation, so Jason brought up a good point where if I have somehow or other capture the URL of the campus, I could go home and get on my device, whatever it be, type in the URL and still go and take a course, technically off the clock. What we do at DiscoverLink is we do provide customers what they call IP limitations, where that ID is connected to the IP address of the store. So if they're at home, they're accessing the web through a different IP. It will not allow them to log in because they're not on the IP address that they're supposed to be on. And then we provide managers the ability to circumvent that, because obviously managers in an exempt environment certainly should and can access the system, outside of the initial IP address. So there are solutions, and that's key and critical to talk to, whether it be us or any other vendor. What are those solutions to help box in and minimize liability?
Yeah, great question.
The next person says, I also work for a brand that is primarily franchise as well. What talking point strategies did you utilize to build value around utilizing technology to optimize the in-restaurant training process when tenured franchisees may operate under the assumption that they don't need technology to deliver training?
That's a great question. And we certainly have similar kind of feelings about training in general in our company. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary. So we're getting towards legacy status here. I think the biggest piece is use restaurant industry data. And so when we would share this information, as a matter of fact, at our most recent conference 2 weeks ago, we pull in data for why do people keep working at their restaurant. So use, whether it's Black Box Intelligence or Nation's Restaurant News, or those polls, that's very credible information to share and say, this is why you really need to consider this. And if you choose to not use this mobile app, or you actually choose to not even use our training booklets, you're going to just train from your own brain. That's okay too. That's fine. We're a relationship-based franchising system, but all the data is telling you and telling us and telling everybody that you really need to strongly consider leveraging technology, because it's literally why people are leaving restaurants, and it's why they stay at restaurants, is when you deploy this or you don't. But again, we don't. There's a lot of things we mandate as a company. Whether or not they use a mobile app or technology to train is not one of those things. We've got all of our compliance courses on the campus that has to be finished, and so even if they don't do the mobile app, they're doing it on their computer. But yeah, you could reach out to me individually, and we can talk through some more of the details of some of the different talking points or data points we use when we sold it to our franchisees.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tara. Go ahead.
No, I was just say I have one more question, which you may have already addressed, and that's, have you seen any measurable impact on employee retention?
Actually, Pizza Ranch, we are back up and over our 2019 sales numbers. Additionally, our turnover rate is better than 2020 and better than 2019 in a lot of our locations. And so there's probably a lot of different factors that go into that. But straight retention, I would say, well, yes, it's gotten better. Is it because of the mobile app? I would like to think so. We've seen our knowledge scores increase. We've seen our training completion numbers. You saw it on the data Mike showed. Those are all increasing. And all the information that we receive says when people have development, when people have opportunities to learn and grow, they're more likely to be engaged and stay. And so we think a lot of this, a lot of these are markers that would maybe impact that, but I don't want to say for sure, hey, this is exactly why we're seeing better turnover rates in a lot of our locations. I think it's one piece to the big puzzle.
Okay, and those are all of our questions for today. Thank you very much, Mike and Jason, for joining us. Oh.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with you all. If anybody wants to reach out regarding anything that I shared today, my email is jason.lechner@pizzaranch.com. Send me an email and I'd love to connect with you and work with you. And Mike and DiscoverLink team, thank you for all your help with this whole process. Couldn't have done it without you. We really appreciate that. And Tara and the chart team, thank you for everything you do for our industry. It's much appreciated.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you on the next webinar.
Take care, charters. Have a great rest of the week and a great 4th of July.